Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the executive editor of Hub Culture and the co-host of the Global Goals podcast, Ms. Edie Lush, and her panelists.
I'm delighted to be here. Good morning to you all. It's the third and final day of the Future Investment Initiative, and I, for one, have had an amazing time here in Riyadh. Welcome to a very special summit that we've put together for you on the companies of the future. So if data is the new energy, these are some of the companies who will be the grid that will power the future. These entrepreneurs operate all over the world. I'm going to take you through 3 different sessions this morning with 8 different leaders. We're going to look at a world where online and offline is completely intertwined. The people that you'll hear from this morning have built tremendous businesses revolving around what you're all holding right now, that computer that we carry around in our pockets. We're going to meet some of the captains of e-commerce and mobility. We're going to learn about culture, leadership, scaling. We might hear about some of the mistakes they've made along the way and the future that they're building for us all. So, welcome to my first team here. We have not 1, not 2, but in fact 3 unicorns here on stage for you. The founder and COO of Zomato Media, Gaurav Gupta, the co-founder and CEO of Swiggy, Sriharsha Majety, and the co-founder and CEO of Careem, Mudassir Sheikha. You're going to have to excuse my pronunciation, but you can call me whatever you want. So first I want to hear from you guys a quick fire about what is the mission of your company, and tell me about the size of the market.
Hi everyone, it's great to be here. The mission of our company is better food for more people. We are all about food. And what we're trying to do is build a food ecosystem where we actually help users and restaurants interact with each other for any need that they might have. So whether a user wants to order food, whether a user wants to go to eat at a restaurant, look at reviews and rating, or whether a restaurant needs the raw materials to actually make safer and better food for people, Zomato actually powers that in India and 9 other countries. And that's what we are building, and we are very fortunate to have the opportunity of shaping food behavior, consumption patterns in India and other markets. That's what we're doing. As far as the market is concerned, I think it's very difficult to put a number. It's massive, and we're just getting started. The fact that in India still a lot of people just eat from home is very well known, whereas a lot of them can actually eat from restaurants. And we've just got into 500 cities in the country. It's very nascent, and people are just trying to experience to what does it mean to actually order from restaurants. So I won't put a number to it.
Okay, just getting started.
It's a long journey, yeah, absolutely.
Harsha, what about you?
Cool. Our mission is to elevate the quality of life for urban consumers by delivering unparalleled convenience. We're a 5-year-old company, originally started as a food delivery business alone, as a result of another failed startup in logistics, so we have that as a core part of our DNA. And over time, we've been getting broader and broader in our interests, basing ourselves on how the consumer sees us. I mean, we were a food company, logistics company earlier, but now we see ourselves as a convenience company. We're doing multiple categories now, apart from food delivery, grocery store, pharmacy store, even like daily milk delivery, which is quite big in India. And yeah, that's kind of where we are. We are in 500 cities as well. The market Gaurav has spoken about, it is a massive opportunity, and we're just getting started.
Okay. Mudassir.
Yeah, so purpose or mission is something that's actually very dear to us at Careem, and it actually goes back to why we started Careem in the first place. So there were 2 incidents that happened in 2011 that led to the genesis of Careem. There was one incident where my co-founder Magnus Olsson, he had a brain bleeding in which he almost died, and as he came out of that whole process, calling himself Magnus 2.0. He made a commitment to himself that he will build something big and build something meaningful that will be his legacy on the world. Separately, in a slightly less dramatic way, I was a consultant along with Magnus, and we worked with a lot of large companies in the region. And we realized that for some reason in this region that has 700 million people all the way from Morocco to Pakistan, we actually haven't produced a lot of large and lasting institutions. I often joke with Magnus, who's from Sweden, which has a history and a track record of producing large and lasting institutions such as Volvo, Ericsson, IKEA. And I joke with him, what do you guys eat for breakfast that allows you to produce them at such a prolific rate, whereas in this large region, which has people with incredible potential, but for some reason we're not able to organize ourselves to make those things happen. So with that background, our mission or our purpose is to simplify and improve the lives of people and build an awesome organization that inspires. And the simplification of lives is in some ways our analysis of the root cause why we are not able to build these institutions. Because what happens is people in our region are struggling with such basic needs to live their daily life that they don't even have the mindset and the time to focus on thinking big things and achieving big things. So our purpose is to simplify their lives, starting with transportation and over time with other things, in such a way that they actually get the mind share and the time to focus on big things and achieve big things and build big things. And the second part of our mission is around building an awesome organization that inspires, because we realize that if we simply make people's lives easy, that's not enough. We also need to create some inspiration for people to start believing that they can do it, and then them using their potential to make things happen. So in short, our purpose is to help the region realize its potential. And the opportunity, market opportunity for that is quite sizable, as you can imagine. But very concretely, there is about $1.8 trillion of consumer spend that happens in the region between Morocco and Pakistan. And most of that is currently happening offline. And we also know that the offline experience is relatively inconvenient, it's inefficient. And our view is that if we can start moving this offline spend, which is currently at 2% of this retail spend, over to online, we can actually help the region leapfrog, and that could be a massive opportunity. So there's no shortage of opportunity. It's really our ability to take the region along and simplify lives bit at a time and help the region make it happen on its own.
So, Harsha and Gaurav, you guys compete on the food delivery side, but you're expanding, as you mentioned, into areas where you won't compete. I want you to tell me about what the challenges are in building those new revenue streams, and be specific on what it is that makes it tough or easy.
Sure. I think when you scale such a big opportunity that fast, you also need to think about how do you build it more sustainably. And what we've tried to do at Zomato is, while we invested a lot in building a delivery opportunity in the market, going to 500 cities and building a logistics network for that, we've also made sure that we build other parts of the businesses which are more sustainable. So the way we address that challenge is that, for example, we have reviews and rating, we have advertising as a revenue stream, we also have loyalty programs that we run for users who go and eat out at restaurants, and even our raw material supply business to restaurants. The way we have built those businesses is in a way that they're actually profitable for Zomato. So as a whole, as a portfolio, it becomes much more tenable, and that's what we are building. And the other thing that it does is that for a user, it completes the food ecosystem. Whether you eat at home or you go out, Zomato is what you actually look at. For restaurants, whether they look for orders or diners or raw materials, Zomato is what they look at. So it builds a much closer, sticky ecosystem, which actually has its own ripple effect. And that's what we're trying to build.
And how has that built trust? How has that built a market where it didn't exist before?
So it's interesting that you asked that, because besides just cost, so when I tell restaurants, what do you compete with? They often come back saying the guy next door. And we are saying, no, you don't compete with the guy next door, you compete with home-cooked food. Out of 100 meals that get eaten in India by an average individual, 96 or 97 come from home. So they should actually figure out how to compete and get that share, rather than actually compete for the 3-4 meals that people eat at restaurants. And the way we've done that is we've used the power of a reviews and rating platform to build more trust. Because one of the key reasons people don't eat out as much, not just in India but other markets as well, is because they don't trust the quality of food. They're not even sure whether the kitchens are hygienic or not, whether the raw materials are hygienic or not. And that's where our thought started, where we started doing a couple of initiatives. One is we actually get restaurant kitchens audited by third-party agencies and put that rating on Zomato. So now users can not only find reviews from users, but they can also find kitchen ratings on Zomato to know whether I should trust this kitchen or not. The other thing we said is, how can we enable even a small mom and pop restaurant to get better ingredients for safer food? So we started this initiative called Hyper Pure, where we actually source directly from farms, from poultry farms, and provide higher quality, better quality raw materials to restaurants at same or lower price, because we can procure at scale. And we close the loop by showing users which are the restaurants on our platform which use that kind of raw materials. So it builds more trust. So I think it's a journey. It's just got started. But I think if we actually address cost, quality for users and build that trust over a period of time, we'll see more consumption coming from restaurants like we've seen in the rest of the world.
Harsha, what would you add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So our divergence in paths probably began, obviously Zomato's been around for 10, 11 years now. For us, in the last 3 years is when we kind of took a good look at what we're going to be the best in the world at and what we want to feel really passionate about. And that's the journey that we began into convenience. So one of the problems that Gaurav mentioned is how home cooking is still the largest part of the India's food market. If you think about comparisons, I think restaurant sales surpassed grocery sales in the US like 3 years back, 4 years back, but in India the gap's like 15 times. The grocery industry is 15 times larger than the restaurant industry. So there's a lot of catching up to do. And
making that grocery side deliverable also has its challenges, right? Because you have to digitize all the products that go in.
It's easy. It's definitely harder than the business that we already started with. So there is a new problem. There's thousands of unique items, and the digitization levels of stores are not the same level as restaurants, because kind of simpler restaurants typically have between 100 to 200 items, and it's a few raw materials that make the entirety of the items. But with retail, it's completely different. People order 5, 6 items, and they expect all of them to get delivered without any miss every time. So there is that journey to make, but going on the same path that Gaurav mentioned about home cooking and that trend is, one of the ways to do trust is to get the brands that have trust already to more places.
Okay.
And we work closely with some of the big restaurant brands in the country to expand into newer areas using kitchen infrastructure that we give them out of the box.
So what are the most trusted restaurant brands?
Obviously, the large multinationals have a certain trust because they already come with an international presence. There's a halo in the minds of the consumer. But the more local brands, they aren't popular. That's the other thing about India. Outside of the multinational chains, there are no chains at scale in the restaurant industry in India. So that makes it harder. So trust is very local outside the big names. And you have to leverage the trust of these brands to keep going after new consumers who may have heard of them and catalyzing the flywheel.
Okay. So tell me, Mudassir, Careem has been really interested in this idea of building trust, but you've also not only stayed within the geographical realm of the places that are relatively easy to do business, but you've also expanded into some new places. Tell me about where you're going and why.
So, in our case, the equation of trust was probably a little bit more challenging because an individual captain does not have a brand to speak of, right? So in some ways, we have to become the brand that inspires trust. And for us, it really came down to being there for people and having their back. And being there for people in the context of a ride-hailing business basically meant every time someone needed a ride, you were there for them with the right quality. And having their back basically meant that when things went wrong, when people had their moments of truth where they really needed you or something really went wrong, you were there with the right level of urgency to support them. So the trust equation is relatively simple. Now, of course, many things need to be done to sort of deliver on it. And as you pointed out, for us, trust going into places like Iraq, Palestine, even Pakistan, where I'm from, required another level of sort of understanding and investment. So I remember someone approached us to open Iraq almost 3 years ago. And our sort of response to them was, we don't even know how do we start allowing people to trust that they'll get in a car that's not going to kidnap them or that's not going to be a security hazard for them. So we took this in stages. We said, let's go to Pakistan first. Let's learn what it means to operate in a slightly more challenging market. And there we started by partnering with security companies that had worked with large multinational agencies. So the company that was doing security screening for the American consulate was the same company that was doing security screening for our captains. So, we knew exactly where they lived in the city. We knew who they were related to. We knew where they lived in the village with a GPS coordinate on their house. And we took a lot of these learnings when we went to other parts of the region that were more challenging, and we made sure that we communicated to people what we were doing to secure them, to secure their safety. And,
So it was very local, very almost house by house?
For captains, it is very local. There was a 7-point screening process where the company would go to the person's house in a city. They would put a GPS coordinate on it because there is no street address to find these places. They would go to the police station, the store, and do some reference checks. And then they would do the same for the village because the person can leave the city anytime they want, but they come from a place far in the inside of the country where you need to also go and do the same level of screening. So it really comes down to investing in those things and then making sure that you communicate those things. And then you also have to stay on top of it, right? You do some things that you think will work, but they sometimes work and sometimes they don't work. So you need to then keep learning and keep evolving, keep learning and keep evolving. And at some point you get to a place where you feel, okay, now I can go loudly outside and say, I'm a safe service.
So I want to talk to you guys about this idea around sustainability and purpose. We know that for especially the millennial generation, but also older folks like me, that sustainability is an issue. You're all involved in improving the life of the people that you serve. However, with food delivery, even grocery delivery, people delivery, it comes at a cost. It comes at a cost to the planet, the cost of carbon, the cost of materials, packaging. Tell me about how that fits into your plan moving forward, but also how important that is to your market as well.
I think it's very important for all of us. And as we scale and become large and the impact is higher, I think it becomes even more important. And again, it's a stack of things that you can do. So the first problem, for example, from a sustainability standpoint that we should be solving in our country is how do we make sure no food gets wasted? There's so much food in restaurants that gets cooked every day, but you don't know where it goes. So we have an initiative called Feeding India. They do over a couple of million meals every month where volunteers pick up meals that have not been consumed that might go waste at the end of the day, and from restaurants they actually deliver it to the needy. And that's a completely voluntary program. In fact, that's picked up really well, and a lot of restaurants are participating in that. So that's one way of doing that. The second part is, and again, I think a lot of it is around just like using food and making it safe. We have this initiative called Use Cooking Oil Initiative, where I don't know if all of you know, but used cooking oil should be used for a certain amount of time, and then it should actually get processed into biodiesel or something else. There's only a threshold that you can use it. So we actually pick up used cooking oil from restaurants so that it doesn't go to street vendors, and it goes for biodiesel generation, which is very important. So we do that as well, and we've just started that initiative. And the reason we're able to do that is because of the food ecosystem that we complete. So the way it works for us is that we, from the restaurant that we in any case work with, we pick up the used cooking oil, give it to biodiesel manufacturers. They manufacture biodiesel with it, and then we bring it back to the farmers who actually produce raw materials for Hyperpure. So it completes the whole cycle for us. So we're doing that. We're doing a lot in packaging as well. And again, to start with, it's not about, in my view, eco-friendly packaging in India to start with. It's about food-grade packaging. Making sure every packaging used in the country is actually food-grade is the first thing we're trying to solve for.
Right. So it's a greater challenge.
Yes, and then you take it to the next level where you say, so we have a packaging initiative where we have packaging SKUs which are eco-friendly, but again, a lot of burden of that price and cost is on restaurants. We have to educate users to build that trust and pay for it so that it actually becomes a larger thing. So I think these are some of the things that we are doing, and as I said, I think all of them are very, very nascent in what it can do, but we make sure that as part of doing what we do, we are doing it in a sustainable way. The last example I would share with is that the amount of fuel that burns when actually our riders, so we have riders, 200,000 riders in 500 cities in India, shuttling day in, day out. it's like 4 times the journey to moon and back.
Right.
Every day.
Wow.
So what we are trying to do and make it more sustainable is, of course, get to electric vehicles. But I think a more easy solution we found was converting them into cyclists. So now more than 10% of our fleet is actually using bicycles to deliver food. It's faster, it's cheaper, and I think we want to scale
better
things like that up.
exercise for the delivery.
Absolutely. Yeah,
What
keep
about
it
you,
fit.
Harsha?
I don't have too much to add to some of the initiatives that Gaurav mentioned because we are in the same space. For us at Swiggy, the journey, the first leg that we're making is more reducing the impact of what we do before going on to do net positive stuff, because we're conscious of the scale that we operate at and the things that we'll have to do to keep the
Do you
program.
have any targets that you're working towards?
So different parts of the business that are more controllable. So we've taken some aim at packaging in a big way. So we have a packaging marketplace too, where we offer restaurants the
So
option.
you can sell them, you can offer
Yes,
them
so we work with
buy.
restaurants to sell them eco-friendly, food-grade packaging. But it's harder to control the use of it because, as I mentioned previously, the cost of eco-friendly packaging is a huge percentage of the food bill as in other countries. So we're trying to see if there are ways to do a group buying mechanism at even greater scale to make sure that the cost can come down from the place that they're at. And it becomes easier now because even the government's now started enforcing regulations on this. So that
Around
makes
plastic
the
as
path
well,
easier
right?
because we don't control the restaurants. We can only nudge the restaurants into these choices. But when these become a way of life, then it becomes a lot easier because that's the only way to do it. So
Okay, and the government has implemented plastic initiatives,
yes,
laws?
yes.
Okay, around
And we have
single-use
a
plastic and around the amount of,
cutlery, you can choose to not do it. And then now a growing part of our fleet is also delivering by bicycles for short distances. So that's going to be a big part of the future.
okay. Careem, tell me as well about the partnerships you do with UNHCR as well.
Yeah, so look, on sustainability, as a startup company with limited resources, you have to make some choices. And while we do things on sustainability, such as moving to hybrid cars, planting trees through our loyalty program donations, having more affordable and pooled forms of transport, our biggest priority at the moment is creating jobs. We actually believe that in this region, there is a huge youth bulge, a large number of the youth are unemployed. And if sustainability is a byproduct of that focus, then fantastic. If it's not, then we're just focused on making sure that we create as many jobs as possible, as quickly as possible, as cheaply as possible, to make sure that the region can start more sustainably solving some of those other challenges. And we've done partnerships with organizations like the UNHCR, as you mentioned. This was a partnership that came out from the last sort of refugee crisis in 2016, when a lot of Syrian refugees were finding it challenging to find home in countries around them. And this was the same time that we had reached that sort of mythical unicorn status, and we actually felt this is a topic that belongs in the region. This is sort of our problem, and we all need to sort of own up to that challenge. So we did a partnership with UNHCR where, through very basic mechanisms, people that take a trip can elect to contribute to the UNHCR on every trip, and then we
how's
match.
that going? Is it working?
It's going really well.
Okay.
In the markets that we've been allowed to launch it, it's going really well. But in other markets, there are some challenges that are coming in the way. And on the other side, we're also trying to create programs where we employ refugees to work with us as captains, as call center agents, as colleagues, as much as possible throughout the region within the constraints of what the region allows us to do.
Because we're all human, after all. Right, can I ask you to join me in thanking our first round of panelists? Thanks, guys. Thank you.